Texas A&M just pulled a Nick Saban, and yeah, you better believe they can win the SEC.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another reaction episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth, whatever those stories may be. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Big 10 takeaways, Big 12 takeaways, so much to get to. I mean, the fact that the ACC, which had a borderline conference contender, go to overtime and lose because of a 2-point... Oh, wait, they won because they got the hold for SMU. That's not making it into today's show. That's how awesome of a day of college football it was. Thought it might be. Lo and behold, here we are. So, Texas A&M pulls the Nick Saban. I have not seen a quarterback swap change the trajectory of a high-level college football game since Tua came in at halftime for Jalen Hurts and won the national championship against Georgia in 2018. I mean, you talk about guts. You talk about my assessment of the fan mood there in College Station being an outright win. This is the highest of outright wins because Texas A&M goes on just a blistering run in the second half. 31-6. They outscore LSU, who cannot kick a field goal to save their lives, and I'll talk about them in just a moment. This is such a statement win for Mike Elko and company. Remember, this is year one. It's year one. Their season started with a loss to Notre Dame on that very field, at Kyle Field, in front of those fans, and it wasn't the prettiest of games. But then they just kept playing, and they kept looking good, and they don't have a surefire answer at quarterback. They don't. They went back to Connor Wegman for a reason. Why? Because they feel like he provides something Marcel Reed doesn't. But in a pinch, they go to Marcel Reed and he changes everything. Now, Texas A&M's defense cannot be overlooked here. And when I talk about the Aggies' ability to win a conference championship this year, which they can absolutely do because they're past to playing in that game, oh boy, it's as clear as can be. That showdown with Texas last week of the regular season, that's going to be one of the greatest college football regular season atmospheres in recent memory. It might very well trump Red River. It just might trump Oregon, Ohio State. It will trump Oregon or Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, it's going to be incredible if Texas A&M keeps playing like this. It's the defense that made the difference, and it's the defense of Mike Elko why I feel confident in the Aggies. Because the offense going back and forth at quarterbacks, I don't love that. I really don't. Even though Marcel Reed played great, he made a couple throws, he's a dynamic runner, I trust that Texas A&M defense. And they gave Marcel Reed a short field in the second half. They picked off Garrett Nussmeier 3 times in the football game. That defense can get you a long way, and therefore you just need the offense to be good enough. You just need it to be capable. And whether it's Wigman or whether it's Marcel Reed, I'm sure they'll be going with Marcel Reed after this game. But that is a heck of a gutsy decision by Mike Elko and company. I mean, you got to have some stones to make that move in that game, in that setting. And you do that against LSU. LSU, who is now fighting for their playoff lives every single week that they play, a 3-loss team, it's not getting into the playoff. It's just not going to happen because BYU won again, even though Vegas thought they might go down this week against UCF. They won comfortably over there in the Big 12, which is just the most fantastically awesome, wide-open conference title race in the entire country. But you just look around at what the Big 12 brings to the table, and you say, well, the conference champion's getting it. Yeah, duh. Well, guess what? If BYU keeps winning football games, you're not keeping an 11-win team out of the playoff from the ACC or the Big 12. It's not going to happen. So if you get 2 11-win teams from those conferences, guess what? 9-3 SEC teams, you're not getting in. Good thing Ole Miss won. Their playoff hopes are still alive. LSU, you get a lean lose label here. This is not an outright loss for LSU in my assessment of what the mood of those fans should be. because the season has still got plenty of goals in front of it. It just gets a lot more challenging now. That game against Alabama, boy, is that going to be a matchup? Couple of 2-loss teams. So I think LSU is a good football team, and they weren't ready for Marcel Reed. They just were not. They also weren't prepared for Garrett Nussmeier to turn the football over a lot. Going into this game, talked about with Andrew Stefaniak of Locked On Aggies the quarterback matchup, and I liked LSU to win the football game because I felt that Garrett Nussmeier was an advantage over Connor Wigman. Guess what? I was right on that front. What I did not anticipate is the galaxy brain move of Mike Elko to say, yeah, we're not going to be stubborn here. We are going to go with the young guy, and we've seen him perform before, and lo and behold, he performed at an incredibly high level. What the highest of outright win vibes for Texas A&M after that win over a good LSU team. I'm not sitting here saying LSU stinks or that they can't get to the playoff or that they can't beat Alabama. Right now, I'd probably pick them to beat Alabama, who, by the way, beat Missouri 34-0. Now, Brady Cook gets injured in this game, and Missouri just not competitive. Just not competitive. They should not end the season as a top 25 team. I don't care how many games they win. When they're playing good teams like Texas A&M or Alabama, they are getting blasted into oblivion. They remind me of Tennessee from a year ago. They'll beat some not great or okay teams, but then once they play an actual team, yeah, they'll get beat really badly. This year's Tennessee team, of course, very, very different than last year's team. And they have a very, very real defense there in Knoxville for Josh Heupel and company. But when I look at this SEC landscape, it's starting to get crowded. It's starting to get mud. It's a lot more crowded than a lot of you thought it was before the year because Texas got by at Vanderbilt. I have a no vibe assessment of that Texas game because it's exactly what I thought it would be. Texas wins, Vandy covers. You feel like Texas is the better team. They were, but the score is not going to be a 20-point margin of victory. Vanderbilt's not a bad football team. They weren't ranked 25th by accident. They were ranked 25th because they had earned the right to be in that particular position. So Texas can still win it, and Georgia can still win it. LSU only has one conference loss. The other loss is to USC all the way back in week 1, who finally won a football game, and Trojan fans, I'm sure, are happy-ish, maybe, about that. I don't know. Talk about them a bit more later. But Texas A&M being the current, I mean, favorite? Is that the word we should use? Should we look at Texas A&M and say that's the team to beat just because they're the only one that doesn't have a loss in SEC play yet? You might not feel that way, but it sure looks that way. When you go to the standings, there is nobody else without a conference loss in the Southeastern Conference, where it just means more. And Texas A&M, boy, have they made the right hire. Mike Elko won at Duke. Manny Diaz doing a pretty good job over there right now. But Mike Elko, that's the right guy. That he has gotten it going at this level this quickly is just a surefire reminder for Texas A&M fans. We have made the right hire. The athletic director did his due diligence, and this is the correct guy. If it's working this quickly against a deep lineup of SEC teams, what's going to happen when the on-field results are actually matching the off-the-field talent that Texas A&M has? What happens when you suddenly have really talented dudes who are coached properly and are maximizing their potential? Looks like we are going to find out in College Station. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. By the way, I apologize to Arkansas. I disrespected you. I thought Mississippi State was pulling the upset. Mississippi State can score. They can't really defend, though, and Arkansas played very well. Speaking of teams that played very well, Curt Cignetti's a vibe. Curt Cignetti's a vibe. And he did it again. That is coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by ZBiotics. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists who are really smart to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember, make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly. You'll feel your best tomorrow. I have used this product in that particular order, and guess what? It is phenomenally good. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your order when you use Locked On College at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, I don't think you will be, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege. Use code lockedoncollege at checkout for 15% off. And this episode brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is indeed the spot to go for daily fantasy because it's the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. That's pretty good. Run your game all season long over at Prize Picks. And Prize Picks, they put their members first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. That's essential for you. And guess what? Prize Picks cares very much about you. And when your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. So download the app, the Prize Picks app, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. When you do, you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Locked On College after you download the Prize Picks app to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. I don't know who to compare Indiana to. Give me the team that has got no modern tradition of winning, that removed its previous head coach because it wasn't going well, was not a bowl team last year, and is suddenly a Big Ten and college football playoff contender in one season. Give me the team. I haven't really seen it before. And you could talk USC, who won a football game on Friday night against Rutgers 42-20. Teams going 2 or more time zones, they're struggling. I cannot believe that that is the case. But USC a couple of years ago went from 4-8 to 11-1 and lost the Pac-12 title game, RIP, and lost the Cotton Bowl to Tulane. But even that was different because that was USC. This is Indiana. And there are 2 reasons you should be even more impressed with Indiana after their win against Washington 31-17. Number 1, Curtis Rourke did not play. He's been phenomenal this year, and yet Indiana was able to go out and play a little bit more defense or win with their defense a little bit more is probably the better way to say that. They scored a defensive touchdown to begin the game. They picked off Will Rogers twice. He had thrown 1 interception all season long. And they had their backup quarterback in the game. And what do you know? They still managed to put up 31 points on a team in Washington that has good defense. It has got some playmakers. It has got a great coaching staff led by Steve Belichick. Yes, the son of Bill. It's not a coincidence there. But Indiana, boy, there was a comment made on the broadcast that I think was really accurate. Hard to imagine all those games with a half-empty Memorial Stadium. Kurt Cignetti's got them rolling. He has got them rolling. And just a reminder, I've said this before with Indiana, it bears repeating. You are always at the Power 4 level the right coach away from doing everything you want to and more. We have seen this with Lance Leipold at Kansas. We're seeing it with Cignetti at Indiana. You are always the right coach away. And boy, they've got the right coach. They have got the right coach in Bloomington. Indiana's 8-0. It's their best start, pretty sure, ever to a season. By the way, here's their schedule. At Michigan State, who lost to Michigan today in a game that didn't mean as much as it used to or didn't mean as much as it will again one day. Jonathan Smith is moving in the right direction. Sharon Moore can get there if they can find a quarterback. They have now played 4 different guys this year. But Davis Warren won, so I presume he'll start against Oregon next week. Anyway, at Michigan State, hosts Michigan. Those will be wins. At Ohio State, oh my gosh. Are you ready for 10-0 Indiana to go to Ohio State, who could be ranked in the top 5, depending on whether they beat Penn State next week? We'll talk about it in just a sec. Then they host Purdue, who's not any good. So Indiana is winning bare minimum 10 games this year. And frankly, I have a hard time not seeing Indiana win 11 games and make the college football playoff, whether or not they wind up as the Big Ten champion this season. So, that is a solid lean win for Indiana. I expected them to win, expected them to cover. But the fact that they did it with the backup quarterback and that the defense showed up when all the buzz has been about the offense, yeah, that's That's impressive there. Washington, that's a no vibe. That's kind of how I expected that game to look. Washington is the best team in the country at moving the ball down the field and doing absolutely nothing with it once they get close. Nebraska, boy, I'm lean win here for Nebraska and lean lose for Ohio State because Ohio State wins the game 21-17, but last week, Nebraska went on the road. They played Indiana, and it was 56-7. Will Howard didn't miss this football game. He had to lead a drive late to give Ohio State the lead. They pick off Dylan Raiola, end of the game. Nebraska is a significantly improved football team. Matt Rule had a heck of a post-game speech. It's about 3.5 minutes. It's worth your time. Go find it on Twitter or YouTube, talking about why he feels there's a championship mentality in that Nebraska locker room. I happen to agree. The fact that they went on the road and got blasted into oblivion a week ago, and then have to go on the road again to what most would consider a tougher environment against a better team, and they are more competitive, they play a better football game, that says a lot. That says a lot about what Matt Rule's doing. I thought Nebraska would be an 8-9 win team this year. Haven't wavered off of that prediction, even though they're 5-3 on the season. I think they'll win several football games coming down the stretch. Would not want to be UCLA next week. I think Nebraska is going to have a get-right moment like Alabama did against Missouri. Kind of. I'll talk about that more tomorrow. And then they play at USC, host Wisconsin, at Iowa. It's not an easy finish to the year, but Nebraska's not going to win just one of those football games. But Ohio State, 21-17. Didn't look or feel quite right. What wasn't what you would have expected or like, but lo and behold, there is no team in the entire country that plays 12 good football games. So a lot of people are going to look at this Ohio State game and say, Spencer, you gave him a lean lose label. Yeah, that's how you should be feeling because that wasn't a great performance. But against a lot of other inferior competition in the Big Ten, here's what Ohio State has done so far. At Michigan State, 38-7. Iowa, 35-7. So they had a bad game against a good team at home. They still won. You know what great teams are able to do? Win when they don't have their best. Ohio State didn't have their best. They're going to need it next week against Penn State. I owe Penn State an apology. I do. I have to come on here and take the L because I keep picking Penn State to lose. But I'm going to pick them to lose again next week, but that's neither here nor there. I keep picking Penn State to get upset, and this was a much more impressive performance than I thought Penn State was capable of putting up. They avoided the look-ahead factor. They go 14-0 in the fourth quarter of this football game on the road. Wisconsin had been much improved, and Penn State said, yeah, we don't really care. We're going to do enough on offense, even though they got blanked in the first quarter, and they're going to play really good defense and hold Wisconsin, that had been high-flying on that side of the ball in the last few weeks, to just 13 points. That is, I'm not going outright win for Penn State, but it's a hard lean win because they shouldn't be celebrating jumping for joy. That comes if they beat Ohio State next week. That's going to be a top 5 showdown. A top 5 showdown. That stadium, undefeated Penn State. 1 loss Ohio State. I tell you what, I'm excited about that game already, and it's less than a week away. It's less than a week away. How about a solid lean win for Minnesota, by the way, while we're talking about the Big Ten? I thought they'd beat Maryland. They did it by even more than I thought they would. But Oregon took care of Illinois. No vibe there for Oregon. I actually predicted that game 38-10, and it was 38-9. So literally exactly what I expected. But what do you do with USC? What do you do with USC? I'm going to talk about that more next week because I don't know that I have all my thoughts crystallized just yet. What I do know is the Battle of the Michigans. I don't think that's the official name for the rivalry, but that's what I've dubbed it here on the show, so we're rolling with it. Michigan finally wins a football game, 24-17. They get Oregon this week, who have been rolling in recent games, but at the very least, the encouraging news for Michigan, this is, first of all, absolutely a lean win outcome. 24-17. 24. I don't care who they're playing. I don't care if you're playing an FCS team. 24. Okay. They went back to Jack Tuttle at quarterback, and he didn't light the world on fire, but, I mean, he was 13-19 for 123 yards and a touchdown. Michigan only ran for 119 yards in this game. But you know what? This is kind of what Michigan is. This is what Michigan can do, and Yeah, I think it's going to be tough against Oregon and Ohio State, but at least he beat Michigan State. And for the Spartans, thought they'd lose a football game. They did. No vibe. No vibe there. There are no expectations. This is a blank canvas for Jonathan Smith and company. They've pulled their upset of the year against Iowa. I thought they'd win that football game a week ago. Alas, they did. I think he's got to move in the right direction. I think he does. So, on the one hand, a very eventful week in the Big Ten with the Indiana outcome being exciting. Ohio State closer than you'd think. But then you look up and go, wait a minute. USC, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan won. Kind of everybody who you thought would win won the football game. Next week in the Big Ten, though. Oh, man. You got to hear it. You got to hear it. Oregon goes to Michigan. They go to Michigan. Wisconsin at Iowa. It's always a fun game. Ohio State at Penn State. Minnesota at Illinois. Indiana at Michigan State. USC at Washington. Classic Big Ten showdown there. I tell you. The Big Ten next week. Boy, that's going to be good. I have been accused by one individual out there of being too much of an SEC Big Ten homer. I do not overlook the Group of Five. I do not overlook the Big 12 or the ACC or anybody. I just make sure that they get the appropriate amount of time and discussion on the show they deserve. And the Big 12 is coming up next because it's the Chaos Conference, and it never stops. And Colorado could win it, maybe? It's coming up next. First, a reminder, this episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Now, my picks this week with regards to the spread and what I said the score would be for various games, I had some really sharp ones. I also had some less sharp ones. So if you get on the sharp ones, you'll be doing phenomenally well. If you're on the not as sharp ones, you won't be doing as well. But if you think I'm just a fool or if you think I'm a genius, you can ride or fade the picks every single week, whatever you like. Just make sure you do it at America's #1 sportsbook. They're over at FanDuel.com. You know the great irony of Colorado? They got all the attention in the world that they could possibly muster a year ago, and they weren't a good football team. Now they're a good football team. People don't care as much. I've seen the television viewership numbers. Heck, I see how much content my segments on Colorado drive to the channel. It's not what it used to be. People still notice. They still pay attention and watch. It's not what it used to be. So here they are, a good football team, which I thought they would be. They're slightly better than I thought. I thought they'd win 6 games all year. They've won 6 games right now. They have not won their final football game after knocking off Cincinnati 34-23. This is a solid lean win outing here for the Buffs because you go out with an opportunity at home against a somewhat surprising Cincinnati team, and you show pretty clearly, yeah, we're just better. Just better. I still don't know if Colorado can win the Big 12, but I certainly look at them as more capable of doing that than I did a few weeks ago. And I think this version of Colorado is more capable of winning the Big 12 than a few weeks ago. So a good outing for the Buffs. But they might, I want to use my phrasing very carefully here so as to not upset folks or to make you think that I'm trying to upset you, because I'm not. I come on here and I give my takes one way or the other. I get comments all the time or remarks from people. You hate this team. I'm like, what do I hate about that team? I came on here and I gave a thought. Colorado coming down the stretch has got kind of a workable schedule. It didn't look as workable before the year at Kansas, Oklahoma State. I'll talk about Kansas more in just a moment, and hosting Utah. But they go at Texas Tech this week. You talk about the biggest outright loser of the Big 12 this week, Texas Tech. Baron Morton gets hurt, you blow a 17-point lead, and boom, conference title race is no longer in the cards for Texas Tech. Tough look for the Red Raiders, blowing a 17-point lead, missed a field goal, fumbled the football, had every opportunity to win, and just couldn't quite do it, which, unfortunately for Tech fans, is kind of how they felt pretty often in recent years. Like, the potential's there, they're just a little bit short. Defense, not good. Not good in Lubbock for Joey McGuire and company. But the Big 12 conference standings are currently BYU and Iowa State undefeated, followed by Kansas State and, wait for it, Colorado. You realize if Colorado had been able to hold on to a late lead and get one stop at home against Kansas State with less than 2 minutes to go, they'd be undefeated in the Big 12 right now. So everybody out there, I've been trying to warn you of this for several weeks now, but I'm sure you're beginning to realize in full focus. Anybody that doesn't like Deion Sanders and doesn't care for him, you better look away, avert your eyes, because Colorado's good. And just by happenstance of not doing anything disastrous, aside from that one drive against Kansas State, which, hey, no one's perfect all the time, Colorado's been good. And if you just hold your own sometimes, that might be all you need, especially in the most chaotic conference in the entire country. Utah, that's an outright loss label because, oh my gosh, they lost to Houston. I picked them to win. I didn't want to pick them to win. I didn't want to pick anybody in that game. My lack of desire to pick either Houston or Utah to win that football game was more accurate than anyone who picked Houston to win the football game because that's just ugly. It's just ugly. But, boy, it just keeps getting uglier for Utah. Kyle Whittingham, I said before the year, I think this is his last season. Yeah, he's 1-4 in conference play. Not good. Not good at all. You know what is good? This Big 12 title hunt. I tell you what. So Kansas State, lean-lose label here. Because I look at what Kansas State did in that game, and if memory serves, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I could write these things down. Sounds like a lot of effort. Kansas State is a team I picked to win. I thought Kansas might find a way to cover. Kansas didn't just find a way to cover. They forced Kansas State to need a 51-yard field goal to win this game at home in Manhattan. Kansas looks like old Kansas, not this new Kansas that we've become accustomed to and has since dissipated from the face of the earth. No, they look like old Kansas again. Kansas State wins by 29-27. You got to just win a football game. You're not always going to play great. I wonder. I wonder about Kansas State because Colorado kind of had them in a position to lose, and West Virginia did not. But BYU blew them out every other game. Like 2 games. 3 games. 3 games of the 5 that Kansas State has played in conference play, they have not been at their best. BYU 38-9. Colorado allowing them to come back and overcome a 10-point deficit in just a few minutes and then having to, go down the field, win the football game. And then again here at Kansas. I wondered. They go at Houston next week, host Arizona State, host Cincinnati, at Iowa State last week of the regular season. That could be to decide who goes to the Big 12 championship game. But there's going to be a lot more chaos that ensues between now and then because the Big 12 is just, it's so gloriously fun. And they're on track at the moment. To be a 2-bid conference. I had them pegged as a 1-bid league coming into this year, and it's kind of hard to argue that they're in a position, haven't done it yet, still a lot of football games to be played. A 2-loss team from this league that is an 11-2, not getting in. You're not getting in as a 10-2 Big 12 team. 11-2, yeah, you probably get in because that means you lost the conference championship game after going 11-1. But speaking of teams that just keep on winning, I hope all the BYU fans out there appreciate the sacrifice that I make to allow myself to appear foolish to some for picking against BYU every week. And I tell you what, BYU's cooking. BYU and the Spencer McLaughlin jinx are as good of a combination as peanut butter and jelly. I mean, they just go together and make this beautifully harmonious product that a lot of people get to enjoy. BYU, underdog at UCF, who had lost 4 straight. What do you know? The Cougars put up 37 points and won 37-24. Here's the impressive thing with BYU. Wasn't confident in their offense coming into this year. Felt good about that after they slugfested their way to a win at SMU 18-15. Here are their point totals since Big 12 play began. 38, 34, 41, 38, 37. I don't care how it's coming together. Jake Retzlaff is playing good football, and BYU's finding a rushing attack, and they're just good. There's no other way to describe it to you. BYU's just good. They go at Utah week after next. They go at Utah. Good old Holy War. And I tell you, I don't think Utah should be favored in that game, even though they're at home, because Utah is just not a good football team. The Cam Rising experiment backfired in a big way, and yeah, it's not going well for the Utes. But Baylor beat Oklahoma State, yay, I guess. West Virginia beat Arizona. Not all that surprised, I suppose. I haven't been right game by game with Arizona, but I was right to not put them in the Big 12 title hunt. But I've been wrong about many things in the Big 12. The beauty of this league, everything that you have a take on that you're right about, there's at least one other thing that you're just as wrong about, because it is the Chaos Conference, and I love it. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.